Shepard was asking for it for three.
Oh, he felt it, didn't he? He was begging.
Oh, what a play by Matt Mitchell.
To Watson, sees a lane, takes it underneath. Montana three.
This is a clinic. This is Aztec basketball.
Aztec Nation, what's good? Welcome to another edition of the Aztec Breakdown Podcast. I am your host, flying solo today, Kyle Kinslow. You can follow me over on Blue Sky at callmekinslow.bluesky, all that stuff. You can follow me over on Twitter at callmekinslow as well. I wanted to hop on today because last night the Aztecs really had a performance that was, let's just be frank, quite forgettable. I do want to give Cal Baptist a ton of credit. I want to give their coaching staff a ton of credit. I also want to point out that they hit some absolutely ridiculous shots. If I remember correctly, we were keeping track of shots that I said, oh, that's going to be a block, and they hit the shot. And we were at 5 some way midway through the second half. So I think the Aztec defense was actually pretty dang good. But these last two games, Cal Baptist and USD, really showed the Aztecs' youth. And what do I mean by that? Well, first off, let's talk about the breakout star of the Players' Era tournament, Magoon Gawath. He has absolutely hit a wall. And I know that it's early in the season. He looks tired already. And that gets built up through playing and through pushing through that and extending your physical abilities. And that's part of a young team, which this team is a very young team. We are led by a senior, Nick Boyd, and a sophomore who's been with the program for 3 years, Miles Bird. But they, even Miles Bird, who is effectively one of your two leaders, still acts like a young player. And part of that is he has never been in the position to receive the amount of minutes that he's currently in. And this team has never been in a position that they've ever been in. And I think these last two games really, really show that there are going to be ups and downs in this season. And for the Aztec coaching staff, the whole goal this year is when those lows happen to avoid a bad loss. And last night would have been a bad loss. And even winning by a handful of points dropped them 7 spots in the net because of their performance. So it wasn't a great performance, but they still won. And avoiding the bad loss is going to be paramount this year because the conference as a whole really took a dump in the non-conference. And because of the 20-game schedule, we now have probably 16 landmines this year, 17 landmines this year, that losing that game could absolutely crush our hopes for a non-conference bid or an at-large bid in March Madness. And so kind of this year is all about avoiding the bad loss and learning through bad wins. But, somebody on Twitter today or last night responded to the Aztec posting of protecting home court with good teams win, bad teams cover. And sure enough, that's a Nevada fan whose team was 10-point favorites and lost 2 games last week as 10-point favorites. So bad teams lose as 10-point favorites. And so I'm not discouraged at all, and I don't think you should be as well. Now, the youth is really showing its ugly head in a few instances. The first is the emotional swings that this team has are crazy. When we are high and the team is rocking and rolling, they are one of the best teams in the country. Not top 25, one of the best teams in the country, like top 10 when we're rolling. But the problem is, as a young team, that gear that they hit doesn't happen as frequently as, say, Auburn or Gonzaga even. And the lows are way low. And last night, the Aztecs got up 19, and they just stopped playing. The energy level dropped. The effort level dropped. They gave up 3 offensive rebounds that led to 3-pointers made. That right there is a 9-point swing. And those plays are really just mental mistakes because they're long rebounds. And you really shouldn't be giving up 3 consecutive 3-pointers on long rebounds to completely turn the game over. And that's a young thing. And against UCSD, we also saw some mental mistakes. Or excuse me, USD. We saw some mental mistakes that cost the team pretty significantly and kept it a close game throughout. That's going to be the challenge this year. Can the team stay focused and stay locked in? But currently, I just talked about Magoon hitting a wall, and I really think that Fresno game, BJ Davis is reeling from that game. The player that BJ Davis was before the Fresno game and the player that he has been the last 3 games, including the Fresno game, they're not the same. BJ is an aggressive, confident scorer. And when he's been getting the ball lately, he's been looking to pass. That doesn't match up with the BJ that we saw at the Players Era Festival. And I think playing in Fresno, he's close to his family. You could tell he wanted to show out. He was forcing some shots. And I think that he's been reeling from that. Getting him back on track and being the reliable scorer and giving him some confidence and a confidence booster, I think is huge for this team. I also think that this situation is unique to the coaching staff because the coaching staff normally and this is a Brian Dutcher special, he's done this throughout his career. This isn't criticism of him. This is just his tendencies. And that is he is going to play his most senior lineup when the going gets tough. When the going gets tough, it's usually the starters, which is very frequently the most senior lineup that we can put out on the floor. And last night, when we went up 19 and they started making their run, he put in Nick Boyd, Wayne McKinney, and JCJ, who all 3 of them are seniors. All 3 of them have one glaring weakness, and that is defensive rebounding. I think that Wayne and Nick, that is the biggest drop-off from previous teams. I thought Lamont was an excellent rebounder for a guard, and that really helped some of the deficiencies that we had. But it's just not how these 2 players play, and it cost them last night. You probably were pretty frustrated at the end of the game, but a young team took their foot off the gas. Up 19, and they just pretty much turned the energy all the way down. For me, the Aztecs have a couple of great sets, really great sets on offense. But the best set that the Aztecs have is when Nick Boyd is in a pick-and-roll situation with Magoon or with JCJ, and even last night, Miles Heide. Or when Bird is in a pick-and-roll situation with JCJ, Miles Heide, or Pharaoh Compton, right? Those 2 players are as good of a passing duo as this team has maybe ever had. Mal could create. You had Thames who could create. Jeremy Hemsley could get in the lane and create. Lamont is not a passer, right? and our guards the last couple of years have not been creative playmakers. Boyd and Bird, who should be your two primary ball handlers, are creative playmakers. And putting them in positions where they can decide to either attack the basket for a layup or dump it off for a dunk, that's where we're going to have the most success. And last night, the Aztecs got up 19 and stopped running it. They just stopped running it. I think they should lean on that a little bit more. I think you're going to see that as the season develops. I think the Aztecs definitely tried to go into the prevent offense where they're slowing it down, sucking time out of the clock. And let's be frank, that is the exact opposite of what this team is good at. This team is good at operating in chaos, as a lot of young teams are. Use your youthful ignorance to run teams out of the gym, up and down. So I wonder if in the future we could see a slight change in the lineup at the end of the games to match what the team needs. I also think that Reese coming back will help pretty significantly in this aspect. And that's going to a bigger guard backcourt. Having Nick Boyd on the floor, I think, is going to be paramount at the end of games, of course, because he's your point guard. He's probably your best individual ISO scorer. And he is, in my opinion, your second best playmaker behind Miles Bird. But yesterday, I would love to see the numbers for Taj DeGorville's minutes and what the plus-minus was. Of course, single game plus-minus doesn't mean much. But it really feels like when he's on the floor, we give up less offensive rebounds. And not only that, I think he's an awesome creator too. To me, I think he's a point guard. I think he is a point guard. I think he is a big point guard. That's his skill set. He is best with the ball in his hands. I think that player, the flashes that you see, I think there's something special in there. I think Compton is a lot more obvious because he's power and he's doing it on a regular basis. But even last night showed Taj is a little something special in him. That pass, I think they called it the play of the game, even after Bird's behind the back pass to Compton for the hammer. They called DeGorville's pass around a pick and roll to a JCJ for an open dunk, the play of the game. I just think that player offers you something different as a bigger guard. And if you look traditionally at how Brian Dutcher wants to do things, he likes this two small guard backcourt. That's kind of been the way he's built the team since Malachi, since he really took over, right? The two small backcourt. And two small as in Wayne McKinney and Nick Boyd, or Nick Boyd and BJ Davis, two players who aren't the tallest, can play those roles. BJ is absolutely a shooting guard, and I absolutely think the future is going to be Taj DeGorville and BJ Davis in the backcourt, and I like it, and I hope that they get some run this year to kind of learn those dynamics. Rebounding. So let's talk about probably the Aztecs' biggest weakness, and that is rebound, the defensive rebounding. I think their activity on the offensive glass can get them enough, but the defensive rebounding is the biggest problem. And I think it's not just one thing. It is a multitude of things. So let's break them down as we close out today's pod. The first is the Aztecs are selling out for almost every block right now between JCJ, Magoon, and Miles Bird. Those three players need to be your biggest rebounders. The amount of times all three of them are on the court together, go for a block, don't get it, and the other team ends with an offensive rebound, keep track of that, because it happened a few times last night. And that problem actually feeds into the second issue of our guards not being the best offensive or defensive rebounders. And if you think about it, when Bird, JCJ, and Magoon are selling out for a block, That leaves 2 other players on the court. That means that Nick Boyd or BJ Davis or any guard are going to have to get the rebound. And frankly, they're on the perimeter, so that's not going to be something they can handle. Finding the balance between when to go for the swat and when to just play safe positional defense will be the biggest area for growth in terms of rebounding for those 3 players. I think that you cannot ask Miles Byrd to play defense any other way. And I think that Magoon doesn't know how to play defense any other way. So for me, the player that really needs to recognize when he's not going to get a shot blocked is JCJ. And if he focused on basically protecting the paint and owning the offensive glass as opposed to being a defender of the basket, I would like to see that in terms of what that looks like for our team and our team's rebounding dynamic. But also, Magoon Gawath is the best shot blocker in the country, playing the way he's playing right now. And he has only played 9 college basketball games that matter. We're about to come up on game 10. He is, and I am very confident in saying this, the best natural shot blocker that this program has ever had. He is also extremely new to playing basketball. It feels that way. His tendencies on the court show it. And so him learning and growing will also fix some of the rebounding issues. Because right now, he's trying to block literally every shot by jumping, instead of sometimes he could just stick his hand up and it would have just as much impact as it was if he would jump. And in those instances, if he is jumping, he is then out of position to block out for a rebound, as opposed to contesting on the ground, which he can do, and then being in position to get the missed shot. That's the next part of his game and the evolution of his game. It's something that Nate Mensah pretty much perfected at the end of his tenure. When to sell out and when to play great defense. But as a young player, Magoon is effectively going for it at all times. And when you've already got Miles Byrd, who is playing as aggressive defensively as you can play, on top of JCJ, who has had to be the rim protector in the past, this is a new role and a new system for him. I just think it kind of creates this perfect storm for your starting lineup in terms of inefficient defensive rebounding. Our guards are not great rebounding guards. Wayne McKinney, BJ Davis. BJ Davis is a good defensive rebounding guard when he's playing aggressive. He had some pretty good rebounds last night, and BJ Davis rebounds automatically lead to transition, which are great for the Aztecs. But Wayne isn't a great rebounder. Nick Boyd isn't a great rebounder. I'm very interested to see what those numbers are with Taj on the court, but again, he's not going to be on the court a lot. And then you've got the backup bigs. I don't know if Pharaoh Compton has ever had to box anyone out in his life. I think that he is just an overall physical rebounder who uses his length in high school and his physicality to get boards. That's going to be a learning curve for him. I think he is individually the one who the Aztecs need a significant improvement from. But he's a freshman, and that's his biggest weakness right now. So I'm for it. He's got years to learn. He's got time to grow. And that's a part of being a young team is failing and learning from your failures, right? When you're a young team, there isn't a lot of... You got to look at it as it's either a win or it's an opportunity to learn. And for Compton, defensive rebounding, if he could just clean the glass, that would solve so many of the Aztecs' issues. Miles Heide is an effort rebounder. If you look at the last couple of games, he has had plays where he's had to go get it. And that's where Miles Heide is a great rebounder. Where Miles Heide isn't a great rebounder is when he needs to be in position to block out. You'll notice a lot of times Miles Heide blocks out by facing the defender, which is the incorrect way to block out. He needs to learn how to get a guy on his backside, keep him there, and get the board, because that's his biggest deficiency. Now, you might say, oh, he doesn't have the best hands, and that's true, but if he's better with his position, his hands won't matter because those guys will have to go over his back, and that will create opportunities for him to get easy rebounds. That's where he needs to work on that right there. But also, Miles Heide is being asked to play the 4. Miles Heide is not a 4. Miles Heide is a back-to-the-basket player. He has never been in a position where he's on the wing or he's defending someone away from the paint. And so all of his tendencies, what he knows on how to be successful, is completely brand new this year because he is effectively the sacrificial lamb in terms of positional playing time. Are you going to play Pharaoh Compton at the 4, who is a higher talent, much higher ceiling? The answer is you're not. You're not going to move Compton away from the basket. You're not going to move Compton away from the places that make him successful, because Compton, they are turning or playing him as if in the future he's going to be one of their primary options on the team, which is correct. And Heide is not that. He's a role player. And let me tell you, he had his best 2 games of the season versus Cal Baptist and versus USD. And even though he gave up some offensive rebounds, I actually think his last 2 performances were a huge net positive. And he deserves a ton of credit for that. And that's something that I think as you continue to go through the season, he's going to have more time at the 4 and he will get better at it. Any Aztec fan who is worth a shit and has followed the team closely over the last 10 years knows a couple of things are true about Aztec basketball. The way they're playing in the non-conference and the way that they will play at the end of the year, they're 2 different levels. I think that last year's team is a great example. An up and down season throughout. And then come tournament time, they played really good. Sure, they blew it in the championship game against New Mexico. But March Madness, they pretty much handled the 2 teams they were supposed to handle incredibly comfortably. So I think this team and Brian Dutcher, I think you should expect them to be better at the end of the season, especially because this team is younger. They have more room to grow. And so right now, their defensive identity is in creating chaos and blocking shots and selling out for every loose ball, every passing lane, creating steals, hard digs. And almost none of it is just setting up to grab the rebound and go. Because this team is best in transition, is best when they're moving fast. And so finding that balance this year between all of those players and trying to figure out how they can effectively defend the paint while also being an option or also creating opportunities on the break, that's the delicate balance Brian Dutcher has to work on. And I'm pretty confident that by the end of the year, we will see some improvement. So don't freak out, please, over the team's rebounding. And Jacob from Aztec Analytics made a great point. Maybe that's just not how this team is going to play. And I think he's right there because of just the amount of times we've got guys selling out for a block shot. But the flip side is, in some cases, that's going to hurt you. And I think last night was a great example. But Aztec fans, they won. They won. Is it a bad win? Frankly, I don't think there is something as a bad win. Sure, we dropped in the net, but frankly, give me 7 spots in the net instead of 1 spot in the L column. We won. We won. Breathe. Relax. This is a young team. There are going to be lots of growing pains, and they're going through one right now. Only 2 games left in December. Light schedule. Away to Cal. At home to Utah State, which is a great offensive rebounding team, the topic of the day. So that will be an interesting game. They also haven't played literally anyone. So that's another point to think about. The Aztecs, meanwhile, have a crazy good strength of schedule and, frankly, I think should be favored in that game. But we've got 2 weeks to get there. We've got some time to improve. Don't go away from the PNR, Dutcher. It's working like butter. Spam it. It'll carry you over the line. Okay, friends. Have a great holiday. If I don't see you at the Utah State game, a great new year. But as always, go Aztecs.